Sometimes, life brings you back to the one moment you regret the most, and dares you to make it right. That morning, Nathan Calloway wasn't just driving through his hometown, he was heading straight into the past he thought he had left behind forever. The town of Belridge looked exactly the same, and yet, nothing felt the same to Nathan Calloway. After decades building his name in Fortune 500 boardrooms and skyscrapers, with glass walls that kissed the clouds, something about this small coastal town, the cracked sidewalks, the scent of salt and morning dew, the call of distant seagulls cut deeper than any memory. He hadn't been back in 28 years. The luxury car hummed quietly as it eased to a stop at the intersection of Rosewood and Fifth, a street so ordinary it would have meant nothing to anyone else, but to Nathan, it was sacred ground. He didn't even realize he'd stopped breathing until his gaze fell across the street and landed on her. The flower stand was still there, Rivera's flowers, the same hand-painted sign swinging gently in the breeze, the same wooden baskets bursting with marigolds, daisies, and peonies. But it wasn't the flowers that stole his breath, it was the woman, arranging them with graceful, unhurried hands. Her hair had silvered since the last time he saw her, and the lines around her eyes spoke of years lived with both joy and burden. But the smile on her lips, soft, almost wistful, was untouched by time. Emily Rivera, the only woman Nathan had ever truly loved. The last time he saw her, they were 17 and invincible, or so they thought. Young love bloomed in the shadows behind that flower stand. Whispered dreams, clumsy first kisses, promises whispered under the stars. I'll never leave you, he had once told her, but he did. When the scholarship arrived, his mother's words echoed louder than Emily's love. That girl doesn't belong in your future, she had said coldly, arms crossed in their marble-floored foyer. You were born for more than a flower girl's daydreams. And just like that, Nathan left. First, for the Ivy League, then for the Silicon Valley skyline. He had climbed, succeeded, conquered, yet somehow, he had never returned, until now. His heart clenched as he stared from the driver's seat, frozen in time. Across the street, Emily leaned over a crate of lavender, the breeze catching her scarf and lifting it like a flag of gentle defiance. Nathan's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. He hadn't planned this, not consciously, but maybe, deep down, he had always known this corner would call him home someday. Without thinking, he reached for his phone. Clear my morning, he said to his assistant. Everything. I'll call you later. Before she could respond, he hung up, opened the car door, and stepped out. The pavement beneath his feet felt familiar and foreign at once. He stood for a moment, watching no one notice the billionaire on the corner. But Nathan wasn't looking for attention. He was looking for courage. The chime above the door jingled. As he pushed it open, Emily stood behind a small wooden counter, trimming the stems of white lilies with the same careful focus she used to show when decorating prom corsages for the high school kids years ago. She looked up, their eyes met. For a second, time stopped. She didn't gasp, didn't rush into his arms. There was only quiet recognition, and something unreadable in her eyes. Surprise, perhaps, pain, or maybe the silent strength of someone who had learned how to heal without closure. Nathan swallowed. Good morning, she said, her voice steady, warm, guarded, high. He replied, unsure why that word suddenly felt so small. He walked slowly to the counter, glancing around the shop as if afraid to look at her for too long. Everything was just as he remembered: the dried wreaths hanging by the window, the faded photos of past flower arrangements, the little chalkboard with quotes of the day. Where flowers bloom, so does hope. Emily still wrote those. Hope. He hadn't felt that in years. He pointed toward a small bouquet tied with a white ribbon. I'll take the lavender, he said softly. Her hands paused in mid-motion. She looked at him a beat longer than necessary. Lavender, the same flowers she had given him the day he left. She wrapped the bouquet slowly, methodically. The room filled with the scent of crushed petals and memory. He wanted to speak, to apologize, to explain. But how do you condense 28 years of silence into a single sentence? So instead, he stood in silence as she handed him the bouquet. Still smells like summer, he murmured. She gave a faint smile. It's always summer in here. That's what my mother used to say. Nathan's eyes drifted to the photo on the wall. Millie and her mother, side by side, hands muddy with soil but faces radiant with joy. He remembered her mother well. Kind eyes, a gentle soul, the one adult who had ever encouraged their young love. She passed 4 years ago, Emily said quietly, following his gaze. I'm sorry, he said, and meant it. She nodded, not asking him where he'd been. She didn't need to. Nathan reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black credit card. Emily glanced at it but didn't touch it. No charge, she said gently. But I insist. Consider it a welcome home, she replied. He hesitated, then put the card away. Instead, he handed her a small folded note. Emily looked at it, but didn't open it. It's not a goodbye letter this time, Nathan said softly. She looked up, eyes meeting his again. This time, there was no hiding, no walls, only a question waiting to be answered. And for the first time in decades, Nathan didn't feel like the powerful CEO of Callaway Tech. He felt like the boy who used to hold her hand behind the flower stand, making promises that life would one day test. I'll come back tomorrow, he said. She didn't answer, but she didn't say no as he stepped out onto the sidewalk. Nathan exhaled deeply. The lavender cradled in his arms wasn't just a bouquet. It was a beginning. Again. Sometimes. The words you never say are the ones that echo the loudest. Emily stood in the quiet of her shop long after Nathan left, the note still resting in her hand like it weighed more than it should. Outside, the street returned to its usual rhythm, cars rolling past, wind chimes on the bakery door clinking softly in the breeze, but inside, the air felt heavier. Still. She knew she should open the note, knew she would, but not yet, not until she was alone. Her fingers brushed the lavender stems he had chosen. Of course he chose lavender, the flower she had given him the day he left for college, tied with a ribbon, and hoped that he'd remember her when the world got loud. And yet, he hadn't written. Not once. Not after the first year. Not after her final letter. That letter, the one she never told anyone about. Emily locked the door. As the last ray of sunlight fell across the display window, she turned the sign to closed and drew the curtains halfway, then walked to the back room where the smell of soil and fresh-cut stems lingered, like old perfume. She sat in her mother's old wicker chair and finally opened the note to simple sentences. I never forgot you. May I start again? She stared at the words, blinking as if they might rearrange themselves into something easier, but they didn't. The paper was smooth, expensive, the ink handwritten, but the words felt uncertain, vulnerable. Even. Start again. He made it sound so easy, but nothing about starting over was easy, not when you'd spent half your life learning how to survive after being left behind. Emily stood slowly, walking toward the shelf where she kept a small wooden box, dusty, untouched for years. Inside were 3 letters. The first 2 were responses to Nathan's early emails and letters after he left, short, hopeful, filled with stories of the shop, the town, little things to keep him connected. The third one, though, that was the last. The one she'd handwritten late one night, tears staining the page, a single pressed jasmine petal folded between the sheets. She had mailed it, and he never answered. Or so she thought. That night, after locking up, Emily walked the long way home through the garden path that led behind the shop. The stars were just beginning to appear, soft pinholes in the navy sky, the same stars they once made promises under. She didn't notice the footsteps behind her until she reached the corner where the old bench still sat beneath the overgrown arbor. Nathan was there, not in a suit, not with an assistant or chauffeur, just him, jacket folded over his arm, sleeves rolled, leaning forward like a man who had waited a long time for something he didn't deserve, but hoped might still arrive. I didn't want to come back like this, he said softly, but something told me, if I didn't do it now, I never would. She said nothing. I read every letter, he continued, even the last one. Her head snapped toward him, surprised. My mother. He hesitated. She kept it from me, said you were a distraction, said you moved on. I only found the box 2 years ago in her attic, after she passed. The wind rustled the leaves above them. Emily's heart thudded slowly, carefully. You left without goodbye. I was afraid goodbye would change my mind. She looked down. I didn't come back for closure, he said. I came back for honesty, for the truth I never gave you. Emily sank onto the bench beside him, unsure whether to scream or sit in silence. She chose the latter. Minutes passed like seasons. You built something beautiful, Nathan said, looking toward the flower shop across the square. I can see your mother in every detail. Emily gave a quiet smile. She always said, flowers heal what words can't. He nodded. Then maybe I'm in the right place. She looked at him again, this time longer. The sharp lines of his jaw were softened now, aged by time and, perhaps, regret. But his eyes, they hadn't changed. Still blue, still searching. I don't know what you expect from me, she said at last. I don't expect anything, he answered. I just want to be worthy of a second chance, even if it's just as a friend. Someone who carries flowers instead of leaving them behind. The words hit harder than she expected. He stood up slowly, not wanting to push. I'll be here, as long as it takes, or as long as you'll let me. She watched him walk away down the path, disappearing into the shadow of the town he once left behind. That night, Emily couldn't sleep, not because of what he said, but because for the first time in years part of her wanted to believe him, and she didn't know if that made her brave or foolish. Some mornings feel heavier than others, not because of what's in the air, but because of what's on the heart. Emily woke before sunrise. The house was quiet, save for the creaks of old floorboards and the slow hum of wind pressing against the windows. She moved through the kitchen like someone who had followed the same steps for years, put the kettle on, opened the curtains, checked the front gate. Nothing had changed, except everything had. Nathan's return had shaken something loose inside her, something she thought she'd buried long ago. Under years of routine and resignation, she poured her tea and sat at the small table overlooking the garden, where dew clung to the edges of rose petals and the vines curled like sleepy fingers. She used to believe life would unfold like this garden, slowly, predictably, beautifully. But life had its own way of rearranging the plan. She reached into the drawer beside her and pulled out a thin envelope, one she hadn't touched in years. Inside was a photograph that had worn, but still clear, a child's smile. The boy in the photo had Nathan's eyes. She traced the edge of the picture with trembling fingers. His name was Michael, 17 years old now, smart, quiet, curious about the world in ways that reminded her of the boy she once loved, the boy she once trusted with everything that she had never told Nathan. Not because she was angry, but because after that last unanswered letter, she believed the silence was her answer. And what would have been the point of dragging him back to a life he'd clearly left behind? He had moved on, so she did too. But now he was back, and he didn't know. Later that morning, Nathan returned to the flower shop, not with flowers, not with apologies, just with coffee and a small brown bag holding a muffin from Margie's cafe, the same one they used to share after school when they skipped last period and sat on the dock. I wasn't sure if you still liked blueberry, he said as he handed it to her across the counter. I do, she replied softly, but I like cinnamon more now. He smiled. Then I guess I'm already behind. She poured him a cup of tea, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them had changed, no longer heavy with the weight of unspoken pain, but lighter, tentative. He asked about her shop, about the town, about her life. She answered each question honestly but carefully. There were things she still held back. Some wounds heal in time, others heal in silence. You built something beautiful here, he said, his voice low. I wish I'd seen it sooner. She looked at him then, really looked. I'm not the same girl you left behind, she said. I wouldn't expect you to be, he replied. But I'm still the boy who regrets leaving. That admission lingered in the air like perfume. She turned away, unsure how to answer. Just then the bell above the shop door rang. A voice called from outside. Mum. Emily froze. Nathan turned. A tall, lean teenager stepped into the doorway, his hair damped from the rain that had just begun to fall. He had the kind of presence that made the room feel smaller, not loud, not clumsy, just there. And for a long, breathless moment, Nathan stared. Emily's heart thundered in her chest. Michael looked between them, confused. Sorry, I didn't know you had a customer. Nathan looked at Emily, eyes wide, then back at the boy. There was a long silence, one that didn't need words to be understood. Michael, she said gently, her voice steady. This is an old friend. Michael nodded politely, still puzzled. Nathan gave a faint smile, but his hands trembled slightly as he set down his cup. I should go, he said quickly. Emily followed him to the door. Outside, the rain had grown heavier. He turned to her, searching her face for the answer she wasn't ready to give. Is he? She didn't speak. She didn't have to. He knew. I never wanted to hurt you, he said quietly. And I would have stayed, if I had known. I know, she whispered. Then she closed the door gently behind him, and for the first time in years, Emily let herself cry, not from sadness, but because she wasn't sure what to do with the hope trying to bloom again. Some truths arrive like thunder, loud, undeniable, impossible to ignore. But others arrive like rain, soft, slow, seeping into the cracks before you even notice you're soaked. Nathan sat in his rental car outside the flower shop the next morning, hands gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor him to something. He hadn't slept. How could he? He had a son for 17 years he hadn't known. 17 birthdays missed. First steps, scraped knees, school concerts, quiet talks at bedtime. Of it, gone. And yet, the boy had his eyes. There was no denying it. He had seen the truth before Emily even confirmed it. Tan somehow. That hurt more than anything she could have said. Still, she hadn't said anything, not out loud, but sometimes silence carries more weight than words ever could. Nathan closed his eyes and leaned his head against the cool glass of the window. All his life he had chased legacy, wealth, recognition, power, but none of that mattered. Now, not in the way this did, not in the way he did. Michael, the name sat heavily on his chest, a lifetime of missed memories and a single question that echoed louder than all the others. Was it too late? By the time the shop opened, Nathan had made a decision. He wouldn't storm back in demanding answers. He wouldn't ask for forgiveness overnight. Instead, he would do what Emily had done for years. He would show up, quietly, consistently, and hope that somehow, that would be enough. The first few days were simple. He bought flowers, one bouquet each morning. Never the same, never extravagant, just enough to keep the conversation going. He asked about the arrangements, listened to her stories, laughed. When she laughed, he never pushed, never brought up Michael, but she knew, and that was enough for now. Then, one evening, near closing time, he saw Michael again. The boy had come to help move a few crates of potted plants out back. He lifted them easily, with the strength of youth and the unspoken responsibility of someone who had grown up watching his mother work too hard. Nathan offered to help. Michael hesitated, then nodded. They moved the pots in silence at first, the air between them filled with unasked questions. "You work here a lot?" Nathan asked gently. Michael shrugged. "Helps Mum. She's been doing this forever. She built something amazing," Nathan said. Michael nodded, then glanced sideways. "She did it alone." That sentence, though casual, felt like a blade pressed gently against the skin. Nathan didn't flinch. "I know you from around here?" Michael asked. "I was a long time ago." There was another pause, but this one felt less guarded. Michael leaned against the doorway. "You look like someone I've seen before." Nathan smiled, heart heavy, maybe in the mirror. Michael blinked, then laughed. "Just once. Weird thing to say, yeah," Nathan said quietly. "I guess it is." The boy looked at him for a long time, studying, wondering, but didn't say more. Then he picked up the last crate and carried it inside. That night, Emily found Nathan sitting alone on the shop bench under the arbor, the stars flickering faintly above. "I didn't tell him," she said softly. "I know. He deserves the truth. He deserves your timing." Nathan replied, "Not mine." She sat beside him. "Why didn't you leave again?" she asked. After that day, he turned to her. "Because I've left enough." There was a long pause, heavy with unspoken memories. "I should have told you," she said at last. "You shouldn't have had to," he replied. "I should have stayed." Emily looked down at her hands. "He's a good boy, strong, kind, but he's had to be older than his age for a long time." Nathan's voice trembled. "I want to know him. I don't know if he'll want to know me, but I want to try." She studied him for a moment, then nodded. "You'll have to show him who you are now," she said, "not who you were." "I'm not the same man. I'm not the same girl." They both smiled, a little sad, a little hopeful. Then, from the distance, they heard Michael calling, "Mom." Emily stood, but before she walked away, she turned back once more. "He plays piano," she said. "Not many people know that. He taught himself. Every night after homework." Nathan blinked, stunned. "I used to play too," he whispered. "I know," she said. "He has your fingers." Then she walked into the darkness, back toward the boy who didn't yet know the man who had once left, but had come back not for himself, but for something far greater. And as the wind rustled the flowers behind him, Nathan closed his eyes and prayed that maybe, just maybe, this time, love wouldn't be lost. Some truths don't need to be spoken aloud. They live in the pauses between words, in the way someone looks away when they can't face you, or how they linger just a second longer before walking out the door. Michael had always been good at sensing things. Maybe it was growing up with a mother who carried quiet sadness behind strong smiles. Maybe it was just instinct. Either way, he could tell something was shifting. And that shift had a name, Nathan. Ever since the man had started showing up at the shop each morning, things felt different, not just in the air, but in his mother, in the way she paused when she saw him, in the way her hands fumbled ever so slightly when she tied ribbons around bouquets, in the way her voice softened when she said his name. Michael noticed it all, also noticed how the man always looked at him, not just with politeness, but with something deeper, something Michael didn't know how to name yet. Not curiosity, not pity, something like longing. One rainy afternoon, after school, Michael wandered into the back room of the shop. His mother was out front helping a customer. On the far shelf, tucked between old wrapping paper and boxes of unused cards, he noticed a small wooden chest. He'd seen it before but never opened it. Today, for reasons he couldn't explain, he did. Inside were letters, faded envelopes, worn edges, delicate handwriting. His mother's handwriting, each one addressed to the same person. Nathan Calloway. He read the top letter, then another, one by one. Her words unraveled a story he had never been told. A boy she had loved, a goodbye that came too soon, a promise to hold on, a pressed jasmine petal between the pages. And suddenly, he knew. The world shifted slightly, like a picture frame knocked out of place. That evening, when he returned home, he didn't speak. Not during dinner, not when she asked about school, not even when she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Later, alone in his room, he stared at the piano, the one his mother had saved for months to buy him. He sat down, his fingers trembling slightly, and played a melody without a name, something soft, searching. The next morning, he didn't go straight to school. Instead, he waited near the shop's side door. When Nathan arrived, holding a paper cup of coffee and a bouquet of yellow roses, Michael stepped forward. "You're my father." Nathan froze. The words weren't angry. They weren't whispered. They were just true. Nathan didn't speak right away. He set the coffee down slowly and met the boy's eyes. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "Not until I saw you. Not until that day." Michael nodded. "Why didn't you leave?" "I thought about it," Nathan admitted. "But leaving again, I couldn't. Not this time. Not after learning what I missed." There was silence. Then, Michael asked, "What do you want from me?" Nathan swallowed hard. "I want time. I want to know you. I want to be here, not just for your mother, but for you. But if you don't want that, I'll understand." Michael studied him. "You left before I was even born." "I know," Nathan said, "but I'm here now, and I'm staying, whether you let me in or not." Later that day, Michael skipped his last class and walked down to the marina. The air smelled like salt and wood. He sat on the edge of the dock, legs dangling over the water, watching the boats drift. Then he heard footsteps. Nathan sat beside him. "I used to come here when I was your age," Nathan said. "Your mum and I would talk about dreams like they were plans we could scribble in a notebook." Michael didn't look at him, just said, "You missed a lot." Nathan nodded. "I know, she never blamed you, but I think part of her never forgave you either." "I didn't forgive myself," Nathan whispered. They sat in silence. Then Michael said, "I play piano." Nathan smiled faintly. "I know, she told me. I taught myself," he added. "You have her strength," Nathan said. "But the music, that's from me." Michael let the words settle. He didn't respond. But when he stood up to leave, he said quietly, "There's a recital next month, at school." Nathan looked up. Michael didn't make eye contact, but the message was clear. "You should come, if you want." And just like that, a door cracked open. Not wide, but wide enough to let hope through. Nathan stayed on the dock, long after Michael left. The sky above was turning gold with the early hints of sunset. And for the first time in a long, long time, he felt something settle inside him, not regret, but grace. The auditorium was quiet in that nervous, expectant way. Just before something important begins, parents adjusted camera phones. Programs rustled softly. A grand piano sat under the warm stage lights, polished to a soft glow. Nathan sat in the second row, seat 1B. He hadn't moved a muscle in 15 minutes. It had been exactly 34 days. Since Michael had said the words, "There's a recital next month, if you want," and every one of those days had mattered. He hadn't missed a single one. He helped carry flower crates after school, waited outside with warm tea on rainy evenings, talked less and listened more, never forced the conversation, never asked to be called anything he hadn't earned. He simply showed up, that was all. But showing up consistently, quietly, with heart, had a power even time couldn't undo. Tonight, he wasn't sure what to expect. Would Michael acknowledge him? Would he avoid his gaze? Would it matter? Emily sat beside him, calm and unreadable. She hadn't said much all evening, but her hand rested gently on Nathan's knee. That in itself said everything. The lights dimmed, the room hushed. The first few students played simple pieces. Polite applause followed each one. Then Michael's name was called. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. Michael stepped onto the stage, not nervous, not smiling either, focused, determined. His shirt was crisply tucked, his shoes polished. He looked older than 17. He sat at the piano, adjusted the bench, and placed his hands over the keys. But before he began, he glanced into the audience, right at Nathan. Just 1 second, no smile, no wave, but connection. Then the music began. It wasn't a traditional recital piece. It was original, haunting, layered, filled with rising tension and soft falls, like a conversation between grief and hope. There were moments of sharp intensity, followed by melodies that felt like healing. Nathan's chest tightened with each note. This wasn't just a performance, this was a story, their story. And when the final note faded, the audience burst into applause. But for Nathan, the world stayed still for just a moment longer, because in that silence, something unspoken passed between them. "I know you were gone, but I see you now." After the recital, the hallway outside the auditorium filled with chatter and praise. Michael stood near the water fountain, shaking hands with classmates and nodding politely. Nathan didn't approach, not until Michael looked over and gave the smallest tilt of his head, an invitation. Nathan walked up slowly. "You played beautifully," he said. Michael shrugged. "I messed up the second chord. No one noticed." "I think you did." Nathan chuckled. "Maybe, but that didn't matter." There was a pause. Then Michael said, "It was about you, the song, and Mom, and me." Nathan swallowed hard. "I know. You really meant it, didn't you?" Michael asked. "When you said you were staying." Nathan nodded. "Every word." "Then I guess we should talk more," Michael said. "Eventually, I'd like that." Nathan replied. Another pause. "This one's softer." Then Michael said, "I don't know what to call you. Feels weird to say Dad." Nathan smiled. "You don't have to call me anything. I'll earn whatever you choose." That night, as they walked toward the parking lot, Emily slid her hand into Nathan's. "I didn't think this could happen," she said. "Not after all this time." Nathan looked up at the stars, faint, scattered dots above the dark sky. "Think some things don't break," he said. "They just wait." Over the next few weeks, Nathan did something no one expected. He sold his shares in the company, stepped down from the board, left the penthouse, the chauffeured cars, the back meetings. He bought a small house near the edge of town. Just 2 bedrooms, a garden, and a crooked fence that needed painting. He didn't want skyscrapers anymore. He wanted sunlight through lace curtains, Sunday mornings with coffee and piano music. He wanted time, the one thing money could never buy back. One Saturday morning, Michael showed up unexpectedly, carrying a bag of tools. "I heard the fence needs work," he said. Nathan opened the door wider. "It's a disaster." Michael smiled faintly. "Good. I like a challenge." As they worked side by side in the morning sun, Emily brought out lemonade and watched them from the porch, and for the first time in years, everything felt right. Not perfect, but whole. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones where nothing goes wrong. They're the ones where everything does, and love still finds its way back home.